The Subcommittee on Energy and Mineral Resources will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today to hear testimony on examining the spending priorities and mission of the U.S. Geological Survey in the President's fiscal year 2016 budget proposal. Under Committee Rule 4F, any oral opening statements at hearings are limited to the chairman and ranking minority member and the vice chairman and a designee of the ranking member. This will allow us to hear from our witnesses sooner and help members keep to their schedules. When it comes to schedule, I also have to point out we will have a series of votes in the next half an hour or so. We will take a recess while the members go over and vote, and when we return, we'll resume and finish up the hearing. So thanks for your patience in indulging us for that. So I would ask unanimous consent that all other members' opening statements be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted to the subcommittee clerk by 5 p.m. today. Hearing no objection, so ordered. I now recognize myself for my opening statement. We are here today to consider the President's proposed fiscal year 2016 budget and the missions for the U.S. Geological Survey. I'd like to thank the Director and her staff for reaching out and briefing the members of my subcommittee and their staff on the President's fiscal year 2016 budget proposal for the USGS and for visiting as many offices as you did. I see that the 2016 budget request for USGS is $1.2 billion, an increase of about $150 million, and 270 full-time employees from the 2015 enacted level. Somewhat unexpected when our national debt is so high. Just as a reminder, the survey was founded on March 3, 1879 for the purpose of classifying public lands and to examine geologic structures, mineral resources, and products within and outside the national domain. While that mission has expanded to cover about every resource, in fact, if I remember correctly, several years ago, I compared it to the book of Genesis and acknowledged the USGS has taken on the responsibility for the entire world and the rocks, waters, animals, air, etc. It sounds like an incredibly daunting job and, frankly, a lot of mission creep. Currently, the only authorized program at USGS is the, quote, National Cooperative Geologic Mapping Program, unquote, a partnership program with the various state geologic surveys. Most other programs under the jurisdiction of this subcommittee are justified by the short but seemingly all-encompassing Organic Act from the 1879 Appropriations Law. While many of the programs are meritorious and provide great value to the American taxpayer, no one in the 1870s would have dreamed of the technological capabilities we have today. These might include the development of an earthquake early warning system, or the 3D elevation program. Then there's the request for an increase of $8.6 million for an all-of-the-above energy initiative, which includes helping with the development of unconventional oil and gas resources and the environmental impact of uranium mining. Unconventional oil and gas development has been ongoing for a couple of decades or more, and the environmental impact of uranium mining, or any mining for that matter, has been understood for decades and has to be addressed in the permitting process by the land management agencies or entities issuing the operating permits. Then there's the request for an increase of $1.4 million that would allow the USGS to conduct research to identify likely areas of potential geothermal resource exploration and development, although that is something that the private sector is willing to pay for. They would only ask that their projects be permitted in a timely manner. Now, under the Climate and Land Use Change Program, you request an increase of $55.8 million and an additional 58 FTEs over the 2015 enacted level. While a significant portion of this increase, $29.6 million, would be dedicated to upgrading Landsat, and that is a program I support very strongly, most of the increase in FTEs are slotted for climate and land use change. I do want to thank you for your work on the minerals program to monitor rare earth elements and other critical minerals. Your effort to alert agencies when a supply constraint may be approaching is helpful. I could go on regarding specific requests in the budget, but I will finish by reminding us, including the administration, that baseline geologic information allows the United States to make informed decisions on how to best reduce our dependence on foreign sources of fuel and non-fuel mineral resources thereby improving our economic and national security. We're not going to be able to manage our ecosystems, monitor our water, or rebuild after a natural disaster without these important natural resources. But the USGS needs to avoid mission creep, which only dilutes the valuable work you should be doing. I look forward to hearing from our witness today, and at this point, I now recognize the ranking member for any statement he would like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The U.S. Geological Survey has the vital mission of providing unbiased scientific information to the public and to the decision makers, helping us to make informed choices on how to manage our land and protect people and infrastructure from geologic hazards. Climate change is making this mission even more important, and that was something that was not even anticipated in the 1870s. I believe the agency's 2016 budget request appropriately focuses on our most pressing challenges, how to address critical landscape changes, drought and flood resilience, and ecosystem health. Through these programs and others, the USGS is addressing emerging science needs to help lead proactive land management decisions. Some may feel that this budget focuses too much on climate change, but I think that focus is entirely appropriate. It's the USGS's job to study changes in and on the Earth, how those changes affect people, economies, infrastructure, and resources. Climate change has particularly dramatic impacts in these vital areas. For example, one landscape change of particular interest to my district is sea level rise, which is forcing coastal communities to adapt to receding shorelines and ports to recalibrate their multi-billion-dollar investments. An increase in severe storms will require enhanced coastal resilience to storm surges. USGS's science helps communities understand the changes facing them, not just along the coast, but the entire country. To further build climate readiness across the nation, the USGS is requiring funds to build their Community Resilience Toolkit program. That will be supported by the agency's core science systems. In collaboration with state, local, and tribal and federal agencies, the program will develop a clearinghouse for environmental trends, projections, and adaptation strategies. The information will provide communities with important planning tools and knowledge on best practices to adapt to climate change and improve resilience. Another area of particular interest to all Californians is the danger posed by earthquakes. My district was at the epicenter of Southern California's deadliest earthquake back in 1933, and just a few weeks ago, the USGS put out a new earthquake forecast for the state, that projects an increased likelihood of a magnitude 8 quake or larger. Should a quake of that magnitude hit, the human and economic toll will be catastrophic. We may not be able to predict exactly when the next major quake will hit, and we certainly won't be able to stop it, but we can and must prepare for that horrible but inevitable day. The USGS is an integral part of those preparation efforts, particularly through their work with the Great California Shakeout Drills and their efforts to develop an earthquake early warning system. With a major quake, every second counts, every second of advance warning that allows people to take cover, that lets trains slow down or stop, that keeps people from getting on elevators, or alerts the first responders about what is about to happen, can help to mitigate the damage. Unfortunately, the U.S. lags behind other countries in its ability to provide this critical warning to residents and industries, but thanks to the efforts of this subcommittee and Chairman Lamborn and other members of Congress, the early warning system budget saw a small but meaningful boost this year. And I hope that we're able to build upon that success until we have a robust and fully operational system that covers the entire West Coast. Chairman Lamborn held a very helpful hearing on this issue where we agreed to work together last year, and I think this is something that we can continue to work together in the future. I'll just continue that beyond climate change and geologic hazards, the USGS also studies natural resource development through its energy and minerals program. I'm pleased to see that the budget continues to look at the impacts of fracking, since despite there's the increased use of these technologies, we still don't fully understand the life cycle of fracking fluids in the environment, like the long-term residence and migration of the chemicals into the subsurface, or the impacts that they have on water quality. I believe some of the oil and gas developments actively occurring right now is getting ahead of the science, but perhaps the slowdown in drilling caused by decreasing oil and gas prices and the USGS's research efforts will give the science a chance to catch up. So I've just begun to scratch the surface. I will just say I hope you, Chair, Director Kimball, that you will help us to highlight in your testimony, and you can help us have an informed discussion. And Mr. Chair, I yield back.
All right, thank you, Representative Lowenthal. Now I would like to introduce our witness, Ms. Suzette Kimball, Acting Director of the U.S. Geological Survey. Let me remind the witness that under our committee rules, they must limit their oral statements to 5 minutes, but their entire statement will appear in the hearing record. When you begin, the light on the witness table will turn green. After 4 minutes, it turns to yellow. And after 5 minutes, it turns red, and I ask you to finish at that time. Thank you for being here. We look forward to your testimony, and we now recognize you to testify.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Lowenthal, and members of the committee. Thank you very much for this opportunity to appear before you today to discuss the administration's FY 2016 budget request for the U.S. Geological Survey. The 2016 request for the USGS is $1.2 billion, which, as you noted, Mr. Chairman, is $149.8 million above the 2015 enacted level. This request builds on increases for research and development in the enacted appropriations for 2014 and 2015. And it recognizes the vital role that USGS science plays in addressing Interior's mission, key administration priorities, and the needs of the American people. I want to briefly share with you a few key accomplishments from this past year. USGS scientists and technicians responded to a number of natural hazard events throughout 2014, including landslides in Washington and California, the ongoing volcanic eruptions in Hawaii, and a damaging earthquake in South Napa, Florida. In July, USGS scientists released the updated National Seismic Hazard Maps, which indicate that more than 142 million Americans in 42 states and territories are exposed to earthquake hazards. Last year, the USGS published the first geologically based global assessment of undiscovered copper resources, estimating that 3.5 billion metric tons of copper may exist worldwide. Copper is used in almost every aspect of modern life, including plumbing, electrical wiring, cars, cell phones, and wind turbines. Also last year, the USGS published the first inventory and geological assessment of known and undiscovered platinum group element resources. The new estimate is nearly double what had previously been known. Platinum group elements are essential for cleaning automobile exhaust and for manufacturing high-octane fuel, and they could play a crucial role in fuel cell technology to produce clean energy for cars, homes, and businesses. These are just a couple of the accomplishments of USGS scientists over the past year. Our nation faces difficult challenges, but our unique capabilities for multidisciplinary earth science research and the dedication of our more than 8,000 employees will allow the USGS to meet the needs of our nation now and in the future. The 2016 budget request includes increases that ensure the USGS continues to be at the leading edge of earth science research. It includes robust funding for science to inform land and resource management decisions, advance a landscape-level understanding of ecosystems, and develop new information and strategies to support communities in responding to climate change, historic drought, water availability and use issues, and natural hazards. The budget also funds science to support the nation's energy strategy, help identify critical mineral resources, and address the impacts of energy and mineral development on the environment. In my written statement, I highlighted several priority areas that provide significant public benefits and allow the USGS to build on collaborative relationships with other federal agencies and state and local entities. These priority areas are earthquake early warning, enhanced elevation data through the 3DEP program, energy development, the Landsat ground system, and supporting community resilience in the face of changing climates. Another priority area, water science, was described in a hearing before the Water, Power, and Oceans Subcommittee earlier today. These proposed investments in research and development promote economic growth and innovation. R&D is at the core of the USGS mission and fuels the advancements in areas such as preparing for natural disasters and understanding the U.S. energy and mineral resource endowment. My written statement describes each one of these priority areas in more detail and the significant progress that USGS will be able to achieve with the funds requested in this budget. For more than 136 years, the USGS has provided reliable scientific information to decision makers and the public. The 2016 budget reflects the vital role the USGS plays in advancing the President's ongoing commitment to scientific discovery and innovation in order to support a robust economy, sustainable economic growth, natural resource management, and science-based decision-making for critical societal needs. This budget request allows the USGS to strongly position itself to meet future societal needs, congressional and administration priorities, and Interior's growing decision-making challenges. And it allows the USGS to further initiatives that are important to the American people. This includes my oral statement, Mr. Chairman. I will be happy to answer the questions that you and other members have. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your testimony. We will now begin the round of questions. We may have a second round, and I'll remind everyone we may have votes in between as well. Each member has 5 minutes to ask questions. I will now recognize myself for the first set of questions. Director Kimball, heavy rainfall and subsequent landslides occurred in Colorado in 2013, and we'll show some slides showing the damage. Afterwards, the Colorado State Geological Survey worked with local communities to prioritize reconstruction. In part, funding from FEMA was being used to rebuild homes and local infrastructure. There were concerns that projects might be rebuilt in areas prone to additional landslides, and that would be in no one's interest. When the state survey approached USGS about sharing data, they were flatly denied critical data to conduct assessments. USGS quoted from their own manual about their policy regarding unpublished data, and the phrase scientific integrity came up that supposedly prevented the sharing of information with state collaborating partners. The state was unable to wait for the gears of the federal government to turn. They did their own survey, duplicating mapping that USGS already had, and to me that was a waste of time and money. Why in times of disaster are the slow processes of internal review and formal publishing blocking the sharing of the most current data with scientists on the state level working to help seriously impacted communities?
Well, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. The USGS stands upon the foundation of the quality of the information that it provides, and consequently, we have in place robust Q&A procedures to assure that the data are in fact accurate, correct, and the best available science. I'm unaware of the particular circumstance that you just cited. However, it is in our general procedures and policies to work closely with our state partners to address issues associated with information needed to respond to natural disasters. I will assure you that I will look into our practices and make sure that we do have in place those kinds of agreements in advance of a natural disaster situation that allows us to share data across state and federal lines.
Well, I appreciate that pledge, and I will work with you and I will follow up with you to make sure that that gets done. That would be very important. I mean, everyone wants to preserve scientific integrity, quote unquote, but not at the expense of emergencies where states and communities are trying to get back on their feet, and they can really use the help of the resources that you accumulated.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the sentiment, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to working with you as we move forward on this.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's a deal. We'll do that. I'm going to now turn over to the ranking member for questions he might have.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I first want to ask about hydraulic fracturing study. Director Kimball, the industry has pointed out to us that fracking has been going on for now over 65 years. There's really nothing new to it. We don't need to worry about it. But didn't the USGS recently put out a report that looked at how fracking has changed over that time? And could you describe some of the findings to educate us on the changes that have taken place in fracking technology?
Yes, sir. Through time, there have been changes in technologies associated with all of the extractive industries. In particular with hydrofracking, there have been changes in the composition of the fracking fluids themselves, changes in understanding of the substrate into which not only are the fracking fluids injected, but also the substrates into which wastewater injection takes place. Many of our baseline studies over the past decades have not taken into account those advancements and what that impact might be in terms of water resources and in terms of the availability of resources such as sand that's needed for the fracking process. Consequently, one of the important elements in our budget request is to develop baseline surveys in areas in which fracking is either occurring or is likely to occur in order to be able to monitor any potential impacts associated with these various advancements. I should point out also that there are advancements in the technologies associated with well drilling itself and with the compounds that are associated with those wells. And in that particular case, we are looking at how that might improve or lessen the risk associated with leakage from well casing materials.
Thank you. Again, I didn't hear it specifically. I think one of the issues that has come up that we have become much more aware of, that the volume of water now that is used is so much greater than has ever been used before. Is that not true?
Our recent surveys of the available literature do indicate that the water resources needed to accomplish fracking have indeed increased over previous.
Thank you. I want to talk about induced seismicity and the hazard maps. Maybe we can, Director Kimball, normally when people think of earthquakes, they think of my state, California, with good reason. But I understand that recently we've been overtaken by Oklahoma as the most quake-prone state in the lower 48, a state that until recently rarely had any significant earthquakes, and that much of this new seismic activity there appears to be human-made through the injection and disposal of fracking wastewater into the ground. I'd like to put up a slide now showing the increased frequency of earthquakes in Oklahoma from the USGS and from the Oklahoma Geological Survey. As you can see right there on the left side, that between 1978 and 1999, there were on the average of less than 2 earthquakes of magnitude 3.0 or greater per year. But as you can see, by May of 2014, there were over 140. They finished the year with 564, more than twice as many as California. Could you describe the work that USGS has been doing to study and understand this phenomena?
Thank you for that question. The USGS has been engaged over the past several years in extensive studies looking at swarms of earthquakes in areas where felt earthquakes have not been common. Not only Oklahoma, but also Arkansas, Colorado, Texas, and Kansas have been experiencing these. We have published a number of reports on these swarms and the characteristics that lead us to believe that they are not part of the natural earthquake system. And those characteristics include the richness of the swarm in smaller earthquakes. Up until recently, the seismic sensing networks have not been addressing these very small earthquakes, small magnitude earthquakes that are not felt as much. And so it's only been recently that we've been able to instrument areas and really identify these swarms of small magnitude and yet increasingly frequent earthquakes. And that characterizes earthquakes that are typically created by the release of, by the increased pore pressure or release of pore pressure in deep injection sites, which are associated with that wastewater injection.
Thank you. I'm going to yield back. I have some more questions, but I'll submit them if we don't get to a second round. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Representative Lowenthal, it is my desire to have a second round. Hopefully the voting lets us expedite things before we have to go back and forth too much. Representative Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. Last week, 19 counties in Nevada, Montana, Utah, and Colorado, as well as several other entities, filed challenges against the USGS report entitled Comprehensive Review of Ecology and Conservation of the Greater Sage Grouse, the landscape species and its habitats. They concluded that the document is, quote, inaccurate, unreliable, biased, in violation of the Federal Information Quality Act, and they challenged the request. The USGS is correct to correct and retract or supplement information referenced in the report to ensure that all information disseminated by the USGS meet requirements of the DQA. I am confident that you're aware the report is heavily relied upon by the Fish and Wildlife Service in its 2010 listing decision for the greater sage grouse, and will likely be just as influential in the upcoming 2015 listing decision. Given the potential flaws and problems in this report, I worry that if used by the Fish and Wildlife Service, could result in listing decision that may not represent the best available science. Further, the challenge claims that the USGS has withheld much of the underlying data and peer review information related to this report, exempted much of it from disclosure of the FOIA. First and foremost, I guess, how is Congress and the rural public to know if this data is biased, unjust, or is just given a report potential influence in the service of the upcoming listing decision? Shouldn't the data support the decision made to the public in order to be reproducible and verifiable?
Well, I did receive that challenge to our report and read it thoroughly last week, and immediately sent it to our Associate Director for Ecosystems to initiate the process that is defined within the Information Quality Act. We take that very seriously, and we will have an independent review team look at that report, and if there are any deficiencies, they will be corrected.
Is there any reason why that the public wouldn't have opportunity to review that without having to go through this process at this point? Why that wouldn't be readily available to other science? Can you explain that?
Well, the report is a public document, and as such is available for debate and discussion as part of the scientific process, which allows for that either through literature or at conferences or in other media. And we certainly take those debates very seriously, and we would respond to any comments that came forward.
So in the process, if we find a little bit different, are you planning to reevaluate the scientific integrity and correct the errors of the report, regardless of the outcome on litigation?
If the independent review process indicates that there are deficiencies in those reports, we in fact will correct those. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I yield back.
We'll try to do one more question and then have a recess between our first and second round of questions. Representative Beyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Dr. Kimball, for being with us today. Looking at the 150 million roughly increases, You have 5 million requested increase to understand coastal geologies and, quote, to enhance strategies to increase resilience. What would those strategies look like? What do you envision in terms of, I say that because Virginia's got a huge problem, as does Louisiana and others.
Well, as a coastal scientist myself, I can tell you that the coastal environment is a very complex one, including many different processes that act on it. And so understanding those changes, whether it's a change in geomorphology that has resulted in differences in how waves impact the coast, whether it's a change in available sediments that impact erosion rates, or whether it's a change associated with catastrophic events such as Hurricane Sandy, understanding how those changes have occurred through time will allow us to project areas that are less resilient in terms of responding to the physical processes that act on them. We provide a series of maps, charts, and models that can be applied not only by federal agencies, but also by communities and localities in order to make wise planning decisions on how they would choose to develop their coastal areas in the face of these potential risks.
I see that the largest single increase you have is for Landsat, 24.3 million, extending the program over the next 2 decades. Can you tell us, it's been around for 4 decades, what impact has this had on the American economy? What impact has this had for the U.S., for the American people?
Well, in 2008, we made the decision to make Landsat imagery freely available. And in doing that, we have conducted an assessment over the past 6 years. And we've determined that the return on investment in terms of applications and savings within the national economy has reached approximately $1.7 billion. That's everything from enhanced agricultural practices to enhanced forestry practices. A good example of that is Gallo Winery, which has been able to reduce its irrigation by 20 to 30% per year by using the thermal imagery, which tells you something about soil moisture, that comes on an 8-day repeat cycle.
That's excellent. I saw also that you have almost 7 million to study the complex interplay between ecosystem health and human needs, this critical landscapes, which includes the Chesapeake Bay and the Everglades. What kind of product do you expect from the critical studies, and will there be something actionable in the study that local governments, state governments, federal government can act on?
I think a good example is the information that comes out of these studies in Chesapeake Bay and that we have conducted in the Everglades and in the Gulf Coast. In those particular cases, we provide not only baseline information, but monitoring information on a suite of characteristics that affect fisheries, both commercial and recreational fisheries, that affect coastal stability, that affect water quality. And those tools will enable planners and managers to make more informed decisions about how they want to manage those landscapes.
On Landsat, do you have a process set up where you can gather feedback from existing users and potential users about what they need in Landsat going forward?
Yes, we do. That is an explicit requirement of the USGS in our partnership with NASA to assess requirements and to identify the most critical requirements for Landsat imagery that then NASA engineers take into account as they develop a long-term sustainable land imaging program.
Do you take personal credit for Google Earth?
No, but we would like to see Google Earth acknowledge the USGS data that are used in their products.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our first round of questions. Thank you for your willingness to stay while we go vote. I'm going to estimate it'll be about 45 minutes, so I appreciate your patience. Then we'll come back and finish up with our last questions. The subcommittee will be in recess. The subcommittee will come back to order. We will now resume our second round of questions. Thank you all for your patience in waiting here while we went and voted and came back. So we'll go ahead and wrap things up. And I'll start the second round. Director Kimball, I was very interested to read your 3D elevation program fact sheet for Colorado. As you know, the President's budget provides increases for foundational data and tools needed to support landscape level understanding. So, for example, an increase of $3.7 million will expand three-dimensional elevation data collection in the U.S. in response to growing needs for high-quality, high-resolution elevation data. Whether used for precision farming or flood mapping, my state could benefit from the President's focus on acquiring elevation and topographical data. Can you tell me the last time Colorado was mapped via USGS using LIDAR technology? And how much of my state still needs to be mapped using LIDAR as part of the 3D elevation program?
I do not know the full extent of all the LIDAR mapping, and we can certainly provide that information to you. In 2013, as an aftermath of the flooding and landslide issues that you had, we had a significant amount of work done to map Colorado. The overall national rate or amount of coverage that we have with the high quality LIDAR coverage is approximately 6%, and it is my understanding that at the moment Colorado is consistent with that national average, but I'll have to get you the final number and provide that for the record.
Okay, please provide that for the record. Also, I may have follow-on questions on the issues that Representative Hardy was asking concerning the sage grouse and the mapping of
We'll be ready to
habitat.
provide answers to your questions.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, Director Kimball, I'm interested in additional details on the administration's request for Landsat in the fiscal year 16 budget request. It's my understanding that USGS is currently flying 2 full capability satellites, Landsat 7 and 8. However, Landsat 7 is expected to run out of fuel in the 2017 to 2019 timeframe and will have to be replaced in the near term to avoid a data gap. The fiscal year 16 budget request proposes building a thermal-only satellite and then a full capability satellite. But wouldn't accelerating the full capability satellite reduce all risks of a data gap and ensure the needs of the Landsat user community?
Well, as in response to congressional direction about 2.5 years ago, USGS and NASA worked together to develop a plan for a long-term sustained land imaging program. The engineers at NASA inform us that in order to build and launch a full capability replacement for Landsat 8, it will take approximately 5 to 8 years with the anticipated launch date in 2022 or 2023. We have presented the concerns of the user community that there not be a data gap, and we were especially concerned about the thermal band. The NASA engineers have identified a solution that would provide thermal imaging capabilities with the small satellite option, the thermal free flyer, that is designed to be the insurance in the event that the thermal imaging capability of Landsat 8 does not extend significantly past its design life, which its initial design life would take us to 2016. We anticipate probably 2018, 2019 before we might anticipate problems with that. So relying on the engineering expertise of NASA to develop a free flyer capability and capacity, we have requested the funds to begin to develop the ground station capabilities, the operational capabilities in parallel with NASA's design and launch of that interim solution. I think that NASA in their budget hearings has provided information about their long-term plans for the Sustained Land Imaging Program, and NASA and USGS will be presenting a joint briefing tomorrow morning to the House Appropriations staff on this very issue.
Thermal only is an acceptable way to go compared to full capability?
The goal of the Sustained Land Imaging Program is to have 2 full capability satellites in the air at all times. The thermal free flyer is designed to fly in tandem with the Landsat 8 and also in tandem with Sentinel-2, which is a European Earth observation satellite capability that is expected to launch within the next year.
Okay, I may have another follow-on, so we may have a third round with your indulgence.
Okay.
And
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Kimball, earlier today, there was some concern raised about, quote, mission creep at USGS. Admittedly, the USGS does a lot more than it did 130 years ago, but the world has changed a lot in that time, and I believe Congress itself may have been responsible for some of these additional responsibilities you've taken on. Is that the case?
Well, I think that you've very succinctly summarized some of the issues. New tools and technologies have happened in the last 136 years. New ways of approaching resource assessments and analysis have changed the way that we address some issues. And in addition, the USGS has received what I think has been a remarkable strengthening of our overall capabilities, but with the addition of the National Biological Survey, there are additional responsibilities that came into the organization.
Thank you. I also want to talk a little bit about terrestrial sequestration. Dr. Kimball, I know that USGS has been fairly active in studying the ability of our landscapes and our ecosystems to absorb and also to store carbon dioxide. Could you update us on where you are with that work?
Yes, sir. We have completed the assessment and analysis of the geologic carbon sequestration part of the responsibilities that were vested with the survey with the Energy Independence and Security Act. And we are now engaged in several site studies to actually test the assumptions associated with that analysis. As far as the biological carbon sequestration analysis and assessment, we've completed the lower 48. We are working on that assessment for Alaska, which we anticipate will be done this year in 2015, and Hawaii and the Pacific Islands will be completed in 2016.
As part of that work, are you looking at the ability for us to manage the land so it can absorb more carbon?
We are. We're looking, we have a pilot study underway in Fish and Wildlife Service refuges to identify decision support tools so that that information can be used by other entities, whether those are federal agencies or local communities, to make decisions about how they want to use the land surface.
Thank you. I'm also curious about the scale that we're talking about. You mentioned a pilot that we're going on. With good land management, how much carbon dioxide could we pull out of the atmosphere? Do you have any idea how much that could be if we did this, if we managed it?
We have those summaries, and in fact we have a web-based tool that allows you to deploy what-if scenarios depending on what kind of land use decisions you might make. I don't have those numbers at my fingertips, but we will be happy to provide both the links to the decision support scenario tool and a suite of potential carbon sequestration numbers for you.
Well, I look forward to that, and I hope that you can. I mean, on one hand, I think that's tremendous advancement, really important. On the other hand, it's a little disheartening given the fact that we emit over 5 billion metric tons per year. So, I mean, we're trying to balance that equation, and I'm not quite sure, I think every bit counts, but I think we have to do more than just carbon sequestration if we're really serious about this. And with that, and I applaud you for the efforts of the agency and for moving forward, and with that I yield back.
Okay, Director Kimball. As you know, the GAO has just released another report on the collection of data and geospatial data in particular. And when it comes to duplication of data, even though OMB has called for agencies to eliminate duplication, avoid redundant expenditures, and improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the sharing and dissemination of geospatial data, quote, some data are collected multiple times by federal, state, and local entities, resulting in duplication in effort and resources, unquote. And the report goes on to conclude that, quote, until there is effective coordination across the national spatial data infrastructure, there will continue to be duplicative efforts to obtain and maintain these data at every level of government, unquote. Why is it so hard to have agencies share data so that we don't have this duplication, which wastes money and time in some cases? In a time of constrained budgets, I think we should be doing a lot better job of that.
Well, we certainly applaud your leadership, sir, on this particular issue, and I can assure you that everyone, at least in the Department of Interior, from the Secretary on down, shares your concerns about duplication and shares your interest in eliminating duplication and increasing the efficiencies and economies of scale for geospatial investments. To answer your specific questions, I think that some of the duplication emerged through time as various agencies asked specific questions and undertook studies and geospatial data collection to answer the specific questions within their mission requirements. But now, in accordance with OMB Circular A16, and understanding that the oversight of these investments really is a shared responsibility, which implies that then there are shared goals and objectives and consequently shared information. Those agencies which are members of the Federal Geographic Data Committee have been working diligently to address this issue. I think we're making some significant progress towards federal, state, local, and private industry coordination, and I think the 3D elevation program is a great example. We did identify, based on the results of the National Enhanced Elevation Assessment, over 600 business uses across 34 federal agencies, all 50 states, and selected local government and tribal offices, as well as profit and not-for-profit organizations. So I think that having the full suite of both the user community and the data generation community has really been an unprecedented level of coordination recently. We did undertake a national study, as I mentioned, and part of that was to understand the requirements and benefits, and some of the things that are included in that is calculating return on investment, single data specifications. We've conducted the first of what will be an annual national inventory of needs and uses, and have provided an analysis of both federal agency and technical coordination committees. So I think that national acquisition strategy for geospatial data is underway, and we will be very happy to provide you with progress reports and updates as this moves forward.
Well, yes, I would really appreciate that. Thank you. Can you give us an update on the US MIN project for the committee on mining?
Right. US Min, of course, as you know, is a data information or an information database on mineral assessments and commodities. It's something that has quite a lot of use. We've been doing it cooperatively with other organizations, including BLM, to populate that database. I do not have the figures at my fingertips of the amount of information that is in that database. I can tell you that under the current funding scenarios that we are probably seeing a slowdown in the acquisition and continued development of that database, but we intend to maintain it through time. I can provide you with more detailed information for the record if you choose.
Yeah, please do that. And also back to the previous issue on mapping and how often it's done and how it is shared or not shared. I will want to work on legislation on that, so I'll want to work with you in getting your feedback and hopefully getting some statutory guidance to make sure that we're not duplicating data that will use up taxpayer dollars. We have to be very careful with our stewardship, and I know you share that goal, but let's just really take a close look at that and hopefully make some progress in that area.
Well, yes, sir. As you stated, we do share that goal, and we'll look forward to working with you to provide an effective and efficient mechanism for data sharing for the country.
Okay, thank you. And we'll have follow-on questions on some of these issues we've already discussed. I want to appreciate your being here today. If there's no further business to come before the subcommittee, we will be adjourned.
Thank you.